Hey, folks, and welcome into episode 11 of the Longhorn Mailbag, answering your questions from our board over on horns247.com. Let's go ahead and jump into this right with our first segment and our favorite segment. It's True False from Ranger's Dad over on the board. Went 3-3 last week. Not the best week for your boy, but as always, we're looking to go undefeated 5-0 this week, a little bit shorter of a segment. Let's go ahead and break down True False Oklahoma edition. Number one, Quinn Ewers throws for 3 touchdowns or more. I'm going to go true on this one. Steve Sarkisian loves to throw the ball around in these games against Oklahoma. He's had over 500 yards of total offense in both of these Red River Shootout games as he's been the head coach of the Longhorns. So I'm going to say true here. Quinn Ewers threw the ball very well last year against the Sooners. I think that continues this year. This is an Oklahoma defense that not only is much improved, but they're much better against the run than they are against the pass. So give me true for 3 or more Quinn Ewers touchdowns. Number 2, Jonathan Brooks will have over 100 yards rushing again. I'm going to say true here. I know I just complimented the Oklahoma run defense, but you also have to compliment the Texas run offense. Jonathan Brooks has made this Longhorn offense balanced, and he has run very well the last couple of weeks. I believe 3 straight games over 100 yards for Jonathan Brooks. He has been playing extremely well, and I think he will continue to do that this coming Saturday. He ran well against the Sooners in last year when things kind of got out of hand, ended up getting a touchdown in that 49-0 victory. I think he keeps that rolling this game. I think Steve Sarkisian certainly wants to keep that rolling in this game as well, so give me true there. Number 3, Texas will score 20 points in the first half. Well, they call this the Red River Shootout for a reason. I'm saying true. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored from Texas in the first half. As I mentioned before, Steve Sarkisian loves to rack up the offensive yardage. The only thing that could turn this false is Texas's red zone foes. They have certainly struggled when they've gotten to that point, settling for field goals and sometimes maybe not making field goals or getting backed up on penalties, things like that. But I do think that this offense is good enough, and Steve Sarkisian's game plan will be good enough to get at least 20 in the first half. Number 4, the Texas defense will force 2 turnovers. I'm going false here, and not necessarily to knock the Texas defense, but I just don't see both of these teams turning the ball over very much in this one. You could say that this could be a very defensive game, and I think it won't be as high scoring as some of the Red River shootouts we've seen in the past. But I don't see any turnovers per se. I see maybe more forced punts than we see turnovers in this one, or teams settling for field goals versus getting a touchdown scored. So give me false there. Not necessarily again to knock the Texas defense, just to say that this will be more of a slugfest with disciplined offensive play. And last but not least, this game will be decided on the last possession. 8 out of the last 10 Red River Shootout games have been one-score finals, so I think we are set up for an instant classic in this game here. I'm going to go true. I think this is a down-to-the-wire game. Both teams, really just punch and counter-punch as it has been in years past. This is one of the bigger Red River Shootout games since 2008, really. So both teams know what's on the line. I think it's going to be an emotional game. I'm going true here. I think this is decided on the last play. Maybe part of that is because I want a really good, fun game that you can remember for a long time. But also, statistically, I can definitely see that happening. Go ahead and move on to our questions now. Our first one from Tip-Off Texas, kind of a 2-part question here. How big of a difference do you think Jalen Daniels would have made in the Kansas game had he played? And then the second question would be, what does next week's game look like if Texas can put a complete game together for the Red River Shootout? So we'll start with Jalen Daniels. I think Jalen Daniels absolutely would have made a difference, and the Kansas offense would have been better flow-wise. But all in all, I don't think the result would have been any different. Steve Sarkisian kind of touched on this in his post-game press conference on Saturday when he said, whether or not Jalen Daniels played, it was going to be the same offensive look. It would have been the same offensive attack. So they weren't really expecting anything drastically different on the defensive side of the ball. Now, granted, Jalen Daniels over Jason Bean, you take Jalen Daniels any day of the week. But all in all, I think the Texas defense deserves the credit for the job that they've done to shut down offenses that have been so good to start the season. And they did just that with Jason Bean. I think they would have done the same thing with Jalen Daniels. And then as far as what happens if Texas puts a complete game together on Saturday, the short answer, to simply put it, is they win. I struggle to find a scenario where Texas plays strong all 4 quarters and they lose the game. If the offense finds a rhythm and gets you points, and then the defense does what they've done all year and shuts down the Oklahoma offense, then it's really difficult to find a hypothetical loss scenario in that case. But you also have to think, to this point all season, you could maybe argue the Baylor game, but Texas really hasn't played strong, consistent from start to finish. They've, maybe turned it on in a quarter, scoring 21 points in the third and fourth quarter, whereas they've struggled in the first half here and there. If they play a complete game, I find it very difficult for them to lose. And I think on the contrary, you could say that for Oklahoma as well. All right, and our final question here from Larkin1. If Texas runs the table and wins the conference championship game, who do you think will be the other 3 national championship teams? Well, this is a loaded question, and similarly to the Red River Shootout, which is always hard to predict every year because something crazy happens and you just never really know what is going to go down on the field. It's very hard to predict college football with so much time left in the season. So right now, these are the 3 teams that I would see at the end of the year competing alongside Texas if they run the table and make the college football playoff. Number 1, I'm going with Georgia. I think they haven't looked their best yet, which was somewhat expected considering all the talent that they lost last year. Coming into this year and back-to-back championships already, it's always very hard to win with that kind of pressure. And they struggled against Auburn, but they have one thing that everybody else in college football doesn't, and that is Brock Bowers. I think he is by far the best overall college football player we have at the moment. And so he can win you a ball game. He showed that against Auburn. So I think Georgia's going to get better and better as the season goes along. And I think they should beat every team that remains on their schedule fairly easily and make it to the SEC championship game. So if they do that, put the Bulldogs in there. Up next, Florida State. Some people aren't as high on the Seminoles, but I think this is a very good football team. I love the moves that they made in the transfer portal. Keon Coleman has proved to be very good for them. They're another team that has struggled against teams that, quite frankly, they shouldn't struggle against. They had that narrow victory against Boston College a couple of weeks back. They haven't looked their best, but at the end of the day, they find a way to win, and that's what matters. Being able to persevere when punches are thrown at you and you're not playing at your best. They have done that so far. They get their 2 toughest remaining opponents at home in Duke and Miami. So I see them definitely running the table there because they get those guys at home, makes it a little bit easier for you. They compete for the ACC championship game. If they do all that, it's hard to not foresee a scenario where Florida State is in the college football playoff. And lastly, I feel like this is the easiest choice. So right now, Michigan. From top to bottom, I think Michigan is the most complete team in college football. They have one of, if not the best running back duo in the nation with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. J.J. McCarthy's been playing well, and they've got a top 5 defense. They have yet to allow more than 7 points to an opponent this year. And yes, you can make the argument, okay, Michigan hasn't really played anybody yet this year of substance, and that's very true. But you can't take away the fact that they have been playing very good football from top to bottom, even if it looks boring or if it's just, going through the fundamentals of it. Obviously the Wolverines' tests will come later this season when they travel to Penn State and then they host Ohio State. But I think those are 2 games that this Michigan team can win. And if they do, they obviously have a spot in the playoff locked up. So that's going to do it for us here on the episode 11 of the Longhorn Mailbag. I want to thank you so much for getting us to this point and being here watching today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, plus turn on notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew, I'm Tommy Yarsh. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.